Jeremy Fox, how are you doing, mate?
Oh, mate, all going well considering the uncertain times we're in. So yeah, just trying to do what we can do.
You working from home?
I think everybody's working from home at the moment. But yeah, certainly we've been working from home for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, cool. How many tin lids you got?
Uh, Tin lids, none.
Kids, mate. Tin lids, kids.
Oh,
I've never
right.
heard that before.
No, I was advised yesterday that I hadn't watched The Castle, and I need to watch The Castle. It's an
You're
Australian opinion.
kidding. Jimmy Barnes'
So
kids started a band called the Tin Lids. Tin
yeah,
Lids
right.
Kids. That's where we're at.
Oh, mate, I'm learning something every day. I got to brush up on my slang. Three, three miniature humans.
How old are they?
7, 6, and 3.
Oh, Jesus
Uh,
Christ. Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful chaos, mate.
How good is it? We get to spend
Fantastic.
all day every day with them now.
I mean,
Amazing.
it's a silver lining, I think, in this working from home. You know, you knock off work 5 minutes later, you're swimming in the pool with the kids.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Cool. All right, let's rip in so we don't bore the people to death. I'm with Jeremy Fox from Fox Group. What do you call yourself, mate? Fox Group Financial Services, Fox Group.
Chartered
No idea.
accountants, business
Fox.
advisors,
Fox.
anything to anyone.
Jezza is our business accountant. I'm not one for blowing smoke. We haven't been using him for a long time, probably 6 months now, Jez. We've been working together.
Yep.
And I can tell everybody that the level of service and the ideas this man have been far and away the best thing that's happened to our business in a long, long time. So what we wanted to do was, I've got no fucking idea about money, which is why I have to pay Jeremy $500,000 a year. So we're going to get him to explain to everyone what the stimulus package means, what it means for each individual in their different circumstances. The thing I'm worried about most for me personally is I've got a lot of mates who are sole traders, tradies, people working from home. Even Crystal's mother's a cleaner working from home, and she was in a massive panic last night about what exactly is going on and how she's going to be supported, and a fair bit of lack of knowledge out there. And if all the sole traders are anything like me when I was one doing my personal training stuff, you only see the accountant once a year. That's down at ITP, and you get your tax return done, and that's the end of it. Unfortunately, those sort of people aren't going to be able to help you in this sort of circumstance. So without me babbling on anymore, Jezza, the floor is yours. I just think, mate, firstly, we need to keep it in layman's terms as possible. I know you're a scholar and a genius, but what is going on in the world right now, money wise?
Firstly, Cam, I appreciate the pay rise to 500,000 a year, mate. I'll make sure that's on the on the next invoice.
Thought if you're going to come on here, mate, I better do you a favour. So.
Yeah, so very keen to run through the stimulus packages, probably a few key facts that businesses and households should be thinking about and doing at the moment. So I might jump into the stimulus packages because that's the information that's hot off the press at the moment. And in the space of 3 weeks, we've had 3 different packages announced. So all pretty hot off the press information. So I'll run through top to bottom, business to household, and give you an indication of the stuff that's on offer. So the first one is what's called the Small Business Cash Flow Boost. Now that Small Business Cash Flow Boost is available for anyone who has a turnover in a business of less than $50 million and employs people. So most of what we see is most of the small business measures are targeted at employment. And this was the first and subsequently the second stimulus announcement. What the government announced is a business with employees in round one, they said we'll receive between 4 and 25,000, and quickly they realised the economy was kind of falling off a cliff and up that to amounts between 20,000 and 100,000. So every small business that employs people, subject to meeting the necessary criteria, will receive at least 20 grand as a boost, and the maximum that can be received is 100. Importantly, that cash flow boost itself just initially offsets ATO liabilities. So that's all funded through or sort of administered through the ATO VAX system. So there's no registrations to happen, nothing further to do, and that's all passed in legislation. So there's nothing more to do there. Now, with respect to a couple of the critical things to meet that criteria, so one's obviously having employees. We find a lot of small business operators are set up as companies, trusts, and so forth. And if the operator is an employee of that entity, that certainly applies to them. What they realised, I think, in the following week after that stimulus was announced, is there was very little for self-employed people who are sole traders. So we started to see this big disparity between, if you're running a small business and you set up as a company or a trust, fantastic, you can access this stimulus. But if you happen to be a sole trader, there was nothing on the table as yet, other than unemployment benefits. So part of the stimulus 1 and 2 packages sort of turbocharged, if you like, the unemployment benefits, which they renamed from effectively the dole to a job to New Start to then the JobKeeper Payment. So people out of work who are either temporarily or permanently stood down, made redundant, or if you're a sole trader who had a significant decrease in revenue, you were able to access, and still are able to access, what they call a JobKeeper payment, which no surprises, it's in the media a fair bit, but that payment itself is like $300 a week. It's you know, it's something, and recognize it's something, but it's pretty hard to live off anything other than rice and water for that sort of money. So they've
Jeremy, my biggest concern with them changing the name of the dole is we're no longer going to be able to call it the rock and roll.
Mate,
We need something. What rhymes with job seeker? We need a new metaphor for job seeker. I'm upset. They didn't. Nothing like getting on the rock and roll.
The rock and roll. There's another bit of slang I
haven't heard that before either.
I've heard. I'm starting to question my.
Can we check your passport? Well, let's check your passport, mate.
But I must admit, as part of this sort of pandemic planning, I did buy a catering-sized packet, a massive bag of Chico rolls the other day.
Oh, you hoarder!
hopefully, the Chico rolls bring me back into the Australian fold.
Oh, Jesus! So let's, mate, to keep it simple, stupid. Let's start with unemployed. If you're already unemployed, what's changed for you before? So if you were unemployed before March 1 and you were already on the rock and roll, you've had a name change. What's changed for you?
You're getting a pay rise for being on that. So they've introduced a coronavirus supplement or a top up starting the end of April. So it's not effective immediately. But starting the end of April, a fortnightly additional amount of $550.
Yep. That's it.
That's it.
Fantastic.
That's it.
Fantastic. Well, with the price of hand sanitizer going through the roof, we'll probably need it. Okay, so the next people, casuals. So how has the world changed for casuals now, apart from especially, I guess, all the guys in the hospitality and fitness industry who were laid off, in my opinion, way too soon. But where are they at? Where are the casuals that are working now? We know there's some things for people over 12 months and less than 12 months. The casuals that were laid off after March 1, how and what do they have rights to, and how do they get it?
Yeah, perfect. Seems like you're across the detail, Cam. March 1, you're throwing the dates out there, mate. You've done a bit of research.
As a bloke who employs people, I've kind of got to have a rough idea. I've got a good accountant.
Yeah, perfect. Casuals are in some ways the hardest hit and sort of the most uncertain kind of the employees in the economy. So casuals who have effectively been stood down. So if a casual stood down or otherwise made redundant, the job seeker payment is available to them. So the starting point is as a previous employee seeking work, the job seeker payment and the coronavirus supplement's available. So that totals up to be about 11, maybe $1,200 a fortnight, about 600 a week. The third round of stimulus, which was announced a couple of days ago and is not legislation yet. So preface, we know what we know based on the fact sheets that Treasury have released, but they're still writing the detail at the moment. But they, in this third round of stimulus, they announced a JobKeeper payment, which was to enable companies to continue to pay staff who should otherwise be stood down or perhaps made redundant on the basis of the business itself experiencing a decline in revenue. So casuals who have been employed for at least a 12-month period on a continuous basis, this is a little bit outside of the casuals' control, but if the business that employed those casuals had received a decrease in revenue of at least 30%, and there's a couple of qualifiers around that that we don't know yet in terms of the detailed rules. But where the business has experienced a decrease in revenue of 30%, that business will receive $1,500 a fortnight or $750 per week per employee, and is required to pass at least that amount on to that employee. So we actually might see casuals who were employed and paid less than that. I mean, if someone's doing a couple of shifts a week, maybe only earning $200 or $300, there is actually an increase in pay for those people in this circumstance where the company can access this $1,500 a fortnight. It's required to pass that on in full, and that is independent of whether that business is still operating or whether that team member is stood down. The challenge for most casuals is that whole process is largely outside of their control. They need to engage firstly with their employer to see if that is a path the employer is going down, because some companies will be eligible and some won't. But until the legislation is passed, which is presumably next week, so they're writing the rules this week, they're going to have to call back Parliament to pass it. And presuming that all happens, in a quick fashion, we'll know some more information, and so will the employers. So until that happens, it's pretty early days, but that's the expectation. So there is a benefit for the casual employee to engage with their employer with respect to that payment, because that is going to be more than the job seeker payment. And we all know how hard dealing with Centrelink can be. So that payment also negates the need to be able to line up for 3 hours at Centrelink.
So basically, ring your old boss, see what they're doing. I'd also suggest putting it in writing to them as well, because unfortunately during these times there are going to be unscrupulous employers who try anything they can to avoid passing the money on. So for the casuals, keep a paper trail. So I don't know whether you'll know the answer to this or not, but it's a situation we have a guy who's working 3 days a week for us now who he was working 50 hours a week between an RSL and a gym. He first had his hours cut from 50 to 8 because of lack of turnover, and then obviously lost those last 8 hours when they shut him down, and we put him on 3 days a week now because it's only been 2 weeks with us. Unfortunately, we won't be able to give him the $750 a week. Is he eligible to go back to his former employer because he was stood down after the 1st of March and those hours were cut after the 1st of March? Is there any way we can help him still get his $750?
Yeah, good question. And subject to any extra provisions in the rules when they come out, he should certainly go back to his previous employers if he was employed at the 1st of March. And that 1st of March date is a critical one for the date you were employed. So if you're employed at the 1st of March, subsequently stood down or let go, then he should definitely re-engage with that employer. And if they qualify for the JobKeeper payment, he can subsequently qualify. Under the information that's been released so far, there's actually nothing to stop him still working for you and kind of doubling up a little bit. We'll review the detailed rules when they come out, but you can only be on one job seeker payment at a time, and you can't double up.
Oh, I might shut
you can't.
Come work for you 3 days a week, double up.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So the casuals, part-time employees, where are they at?
Yeah,
They're getting a pay rise a lot. Eh?
yeah, potentially. So that same JobKeeper payment, so the same system. If a permanent employee is otherwise let go, they can access the job seeker payment, that 1,100 a fortnight. Um, but again, based on the employer that they were employed by, accessing the JobKeeper payment based on their own revenue decreasing, the casual, sorry, the part-time employee, if they were employed as at the 1st of March, um, then the employer has to, if they themselves can access that JobKeeper payment, the part-time employee has to receive that. So you might have someone who was on $200 or $300 a week working, at a restaurant or something. That employer is now closed. They're going to get a pay rise from that to the $750 a week. Pre-tax, mind you, there'll be a little bit of tax on that, but that'll be a big win for them. And the rules are planned to extend for a 6-month window. So whenever the restaurants open up, everyone's probably hoping that economy-wise sooner rather than later, but from a personal perspective, probably happy enough to collect the $750 and spend some time with the family.
I had a chat. Someone asked me on, I don't know, I mean, they're asking me like I know what I'm talking about, but whether people would actually be getting a pay rise during this. And my initial thought was there's no way they can chop someone who's making 1,500 a week down to 750, but someone who's making 300 a week up to 750. Are they really doing that? I would have thought that the 750 was a cap, not a flat payment.
Yeah, and it's a good thought. They, given the dynamic nature which the economy is changing, I feel like this is a politician answer. Yes,
no sitting on the fence, mate. If you're going to sit here and talk with me, we don't sit on the fence. We just call it as it is. Right?
So yes, they are doing it. I think basically they've rushed the ideas through, the legislation through, and they've just picked it and said, well, we're going to base this on average weekly earnings. Forget if you're getting paid more. Forget if you're getting paid less. We're just giving everyone the 750. That's it.
Okay.
So,
they had to do something, right? We're not here to bag the government. They had to do something.
Exactly.
The world would have come to an end. Sacked everyone without giving them any support. So.
Just to kind of highlight though, just with that from the employee perspective, there's heaps of different scenarios that they might be facing. One is they're stood down, in which case if they can access the JobKeeper, the $750 a week, $1,500 a fortnight from their employer, great. If they can't, they jump in Centrelink and get that payment. There's a bunch of kind of workplaces that are on a bit more go slow, so they're required to work for a little bit, but not the usual hours. And whether they're effectively stood down, have reduced hours, or the same hours is largely outside of their control. That's largely the employer's driven drives that process.
Yes.
But they have to get paid effectively the greater of whatever hours they're working, or the $750 a week. So if they're working, say, 10 hours or 5 hours or 2, they're still on $750 a week minimum.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a lot of people. So I'll cut there before we go into full-time sole traders and companies.
Mm-hmm.
Going to be a lot of people, by the sounds of it, with a lot of extra money in their pocket. We need to save that money, don't we, Jeremy? We don't go and spend that money on VB and expensive video games. They should be putting any extra they're getting now away.
Yeah, correct. I will rephrase this a little bit.
Put it.
So my father once told me, if he won the lotto, he'd spend half on video games and booze, and just waste the other half. so
I agree.
We won't be doing.
I agree. I wasn't there suggesting that PS4 and alcohol were wastes of money. I'm just saying.
It's very uncertain times, and I guess the critical things that no one knows is how long this will last, how bad it's going to get. I always like to take the positive approach, but in these times, it's really the time not to be spending money on frivolous purchases. I mean, the time to do that's when the economy's on the rebound, and we need to get out there and support small business and start going back to cafes and restaurants and and the likes. But the time for now is, I wouldn't even be suggesting reducing debt. I'd be suggesting holding on to that cash,
Cash is
waiting and
yeah.
seeing what's going to happen. Naturally, got to put up with family. Yeah, and then look, if we all need to get behind the economy and go out for a few more nice dinners, Cam, sponsored by their clients, we can.
Mate, I'm on the free version of Zoom here, buddy. So there's no. So I guess following on from that question, then I've had a few discussions with people about whether they should or shouldn't be trying to defer their home loan. My train of thought is we've asked for ours to be deferred, and that home loan money will be sitting in the bank again because cash is king, and we don't know if we're going to need it. Am I worried about the home loan being extended by 6 months? Well, it's a bloody 30-year loan anyway, so 30 years in 6 months isn't going to make a huge difference in my life. There's other people who are dead set against it and holding off for as long as they can. For what I see, for pride reasons more than anything, because I can't see any logical reason not to defer your home if you can't. Am I on the right track, or are the guys who are going to continue paying the banks on the right track?
No, I'd back you in that one, Cam. I mean, interest rates are really low. The banks are offering a 6-month repayment holiday. Look, they still charge interest, which you're going to be paying that interest anyway, whether you're paying it now or later. And sure, there is a slight compounding effect. So if you know your interest bill would have been, say, $1,000 a month, and your repayment, $2, so effectively you're paying the loan off over time. Yep. You're paying that $1,000 a month regardless. It might, 6 months is going to cost you $6,000 plus a bit of compounding and a bit of time at the back end of your life. That it made a fit personal trainer like yourself, an ex-personal trainer, should be living till they're 100. So.
I'm lucky to have made it through March, mate. It was the longest 6 months of my life. But yeah, so cash is king, guys. Defer your home loans. Don't pay anyone. It's silly having $500 a week in our case is our mortgage repayment. We're not spending that $500 a week. We are keeping it there. And if all is well and good at the end of the 6 months, we'll chuck that money straight back off the home loan. But I feel not having a war chest there in case you need it, especially if you've got kids and a family, and the government's changing their mind every 4 bloody days about what's going on. So keep the cash. Good advice. All right. So back to what we're doing. So we did part-time employees. Now the full-timers, a lot of these guys are going to be taking a pay cut.
That's the expectation. So a lot of employers are standing down their workforce, which they can do if they're required to close, or there's no work based on factors outside their control. And those guys are going to be getting the $750 a week, presumably the JobKeeper payment facilitated by their employers. But again, slightly better than Centrelink, and it's not a huge amount, but it helps. We're seeing a lot of kind of companies engaging with their workforce where they're on the more of the go slow approach. So if you're stood down, that's easy. You're not working and you're getting paid at least $750 a week. We're seeing a lot of companies sort of in that middle ground where they're not closed and they're not doing what they used to do. And those guys are, assessing this $750 a week. Is that, a supplement to their wage, and do we continue to pay their full wage, or do we try to negotiate reduced hours and see where that goes? So there's a little bit more development to happen there around the detailed rules around the $750 a week. But for the moment, they're probably the hardest hit because they're the most likely to receive a decrease in pay in the short term, but also the most sort of beneficial for doing things like holding off their home loans or negotiating with their suppliers, landlords, etc. So
if they do lock everything down and businesses are unable to make any income, is there a fair chance that the government freezes mortgages, rents, basically freezes all expenses to counter the inability for anyone to make income, at which point $750 a week isn't too bad? I mean, if we're not paying for anything, you can buy that's at least 6 packets of cigarettes.
Mate, I remember the days on the schoolyard where your cigarette was $1.
Oh, mate. They've gone up to $2 now. No, the bums will even say, I'll give you $2 for a smoke. So even the bums are moving with inflation, mate. It's I've noticed down in Gosford. Oh, we've had a transmission.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but yeah. So is that? Am I talking out my backside there, mate? Would they freeze everything if they lock everyone down and businesses are unable to do anything? Would they freeze everything?
I think look, it's inherently difficult for a government to legislate a private arrangement. So you have a bank, public company, and an individual who enter a loan contract, or a landlord and a tenant. It's very hard for the government to get in the middle and say what you can and can't do. But what we're seeing them trying to do now is legislate around the outskirts and say, well, if someone doesn't pay for 6 months, you can't terminate them at the moment. So basically trying to, in effect, do that without making people change what their contracts say.
Yeah.
So look, it's always a possibility, but I think there's much more understanding in the wider community now around, we're all in this together and we've got to sort of help each other out. So
yeah. And just finishing off on full-time people. So the advice there is, again, similar to the casuals, engage with your employer. If you've got the right leadership and you're working for the right person, they will have your best interests at heart. There may need to be some negotiation around hours or the way things are structured on your current deal. It may not be possible in the current environment for people to top up the $750 that the government gives. It may just not be viable. And Jeremy, you see lots of businesses books on lots of days. I'm sure you can back me up there, where in some cases businesses will not be able to afford to top up the $750.
Yeah, and we're seeing, particularly with respect to, pay and conditions. I mean, there's always a minimum award level which sets the bare minimum base. But what we've seen over the last 10 years is a lot of businesses have been doing pretty well and sharing the success with their team, as a good business does. But now we're seeing, obviously, the economy paring back, businesses paring back. And, we've been speaking to colleagues who, business-wide have done 25, 30% pay cuts and whatever the numbers are. But most employers right now, across the maybe 300 clients we work with, I've seen less than 10 that are doing pretty well and haven't noticed anything too drastic just yet. But the vast majority of the others are all having conversations with their team and saying, yeah, we're happy to share the love when the successes were there, but now it's time for us all to kind of push through together and negotiate on pay, conditions, hours, all those sort of things. So yeah, it's definitely something that's happening economy wide at the moment.
Yeah, it's got to be give and take. If you're willing to take the big commissions and the huge paychecks while times are good off your employer, now if they're struggling, everyone needs to chip in on the other end. We can't just keep putting our hands out. But the ones I've heard that are having open and honest communications aren't running into too many problems. It's the ones that are where the employers might not be sharing as much information as they should, which is creating uncertainty, which is only going to feed into people's fears and cause more panic and keep people's hands out for longer, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Now, actually, the main reason for me getting you on here, mate, sole traders. I've got a lot of people in my generation and your generation. You're the similar age to me, mate, even though I look 10 years younger than you. Take your job out of the equation for a second. Just a lot of people our age are tradies, are sole traders, are trying to do their own thing. Don't necessarily have staff or may have one or two staff. Don't even know how, they hear the word, show a 30% downturn and they go, huh? And that's not a slight on them. That's where I was. That's why I pay you, Jezza. I don't fucking know finance. I don't know figures. And having a few conversations with a few of those guys, I'm not worried for them. There's definite lack of knowledge out there. And because of that, most of these guys have got families. Most of these guys have got young kids. And I need them to have a bit more certainty, or at least know what's going on, so they can go home and tell their wives and kids something that they're going to be okay, or they're not. Which way? What's happening with sole traders, mate?
Yeah, so good question. Three things, and until the last stimulus round, not a lot, but those three things. So the absolute base level, completely out of work. Up until a couple of days ago, the spot for those guys was Centrelink, the JobKeeper Payment. So $300 a week for the next month, and then jumping up to $600 a week after that. Not a great process to have to go through, and not a great amount. So that's the base level for a sole trader. They did, as part of stimulus 1 and 2, throw in the ability to access superannuation. So I'll preface this by saying, look, it's a measure. It's got longer term effects, but if somebody could display that their hours had reduced by 20% or their revenue, if they're a sole trader, had reduced by 20%, they could access 10 grand tax free from their super between now and 30 June, and another 10 grand between July and September, which, you'll miss out on the compounding effect long term of whatever that number will be, and people will come out with astronomical numbers around what they're missing out. So I'd caution doing it, but as a case of survival and obviously looking after your family, so that is there. We're advised from the government that application itself is made through someone's MyGov account. There'll be a simple form to fill out in the coming weeks through MyGov, and it'll just all happen. So other than that, until a couple of days ago, that was it. So a couple of days ago, when they released Stimulus 3, which has been the most expensive measure to date, $130 billion, more than Cam's probably got under his mattress, I'd expect. But
A lot of durries there, brother.
So that it's all part of the JobKeeper payment. So that they recognise with 1 and 2, there was not a lot for sole traders, and as Cam mentioned, so many people are running their own race and enjoying the flexibility of doing their own thing, and most of them are just average battlers. So with stimulus number 3, the JobKeeper payment, that has been drafted to be available to partnerships and sole traders as well, being the self-employed people, based on having a reduction in revenue of 30%. So the examples they give in their fact sheets is, Sally's running a florist business or something, earning X, has a reduction in revenue of 30%, and she can now access this $1,500 per fortnight or $750 a week. Now, until the detailed rules come out, we won't know, if there's any other limits in there, but currently it's just on a turnover test. So regardless of what your earnings are, they could have been 10 grand a week and they've dropped to 7 grand a week, or they could have been $1,000 a week and they've dropped to nothing. They're saying they can access the JobKeeper payment as well. Yeah.
Okay, so is that turnover got to be shown month on month, or is that same month last year, and how does a guy who went to one of the lesser public schools on the planet show a downturn? Who do they need to talk to, mate, to get that stuff done?
So
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, naturally, this is the sort of time where people should be engaging with a real quality accountant, whether they've got an existing accountant or whether they're seeking a new one. This is the time that you really need someone strong in your corner on some of this detail, because in general, with a lot of the overall stimulus measures, there's a bit of flexibility and a bit of leeway in planning to go into it. So with the turnover specifically, they released fact sheet 1, which 2 or 3 days ago, which basically said month on month decrease in revenue versus the same period the year before. So you're looking at, say, April 2020 versus April 2019. If that's reduced by 30%. Then you can qualify. Then I guess a lot of people read that and were really confused around when you're qualifying. Is it what if your turnover is different because you've changed things, or you're growing, or so then they released fact sheet 2 about 24 hours later, which we've kind of all read and are scratching our heads because it is more confusing than the first one. So the simple answer is we don't know yet, but they basically added a whole lot of detail saying, look, there's all these other factors. We understand everyone's different. We've got a bit of leeway. If you think your turnover was going to drop by 30% but didn't quite get there, we'll probably wave it through. Like, there's sort of a bit more uncertainty with this one. So it's still a work in progress, but engage with your accountant, I would suggest, or a quality accountant, and get those figures on paper. Because one of the things we're experiencing with a lot of our clients is to say, well, the danger period is actually the decrease in revenue for any business that's not quite 30%. So you're not getting this $1,500 a fortnight, but you're still might not be making enough to make ends meet. So that's where, having real solid knowledge of what your revenue was last year, month on month, and what it would need to be this year to access the stimulus, just give you the ability, I guess, to have all the facts on the table and say, hey, look, how do we best, maximize, our personal position without, without doing anything wrong. So.
Yeah, well, that's a position, as you know, we find ourselves in. We've actually had a better March than we've had for a couple of years. So as far as downturn goes, I don't know how, well, we're not going to be able to show it, which on one side of the coin is fucking awesome. I mean, who can complain about having a better month than normal? The dangerous side of that is, as you just said, we might not know how big a downturn we're in until we've already burnt through all that cash. So if ever you were going to spend more money, guys, in a time like this, it has to be on a decent accountant. I'm not saying that to pump Jeremy's tyres. There's many other good accountants out there, but there's also many shocking ones. I know my business partner, who's got another accountant for his other business, still hasn't heard from them. Whereas I've had videos from you, emails from you, you've already registered us for any rebates that we might be able to get. You're on here doing this. Unfortunately, your $600 tax return accountant may not be across all this stuff and may not have the strategies in place. So if you ever were going to spend a bit of coin and you to shore your family up and make sure you are making the right decisions, then find a good one for sure. Mate, probably last people off the rank is business owners, company owners. How should they be approaching this? I know you just, I guess a lot of the stuff from sole trader is going to cross over, but we've seen a lot of guys rush out and get rid of staff already. We've seen massive decisions be made without all the legislation and all the information be there. I'm sort of on a my thing is, well, until we know all the details, let's not make any rash decisions, because especially when it comes to letting people go and doing that thing, we're messing with people's lives heavily. What's your advice for business and company owners as it sits today? Because this might be changed again tomorrow, mate. We might need to get you back on. But as it sits right now, how would you advise people to go about the managing of staff and their cash flow?
Yeah, so again, it starts with having all the facts on the table and engaging with, your advisors, accountant, and so forth. So round one and round two of the stimulus has been announced, legislated, passed, perfect. Round three, the JobKeeper payments, in the works and should come out in the next couple of, in the next week and a half. I expect that all to be waved through. So the critical thing for any small business owner is, regardless of how many employees you might have, 20, 50, this JobKeeper payment is actually available economy-wide. The 30% decrease in revenue is anything up to $1 billion turnover company. So Wisebury Carry On should just squeeze in there, Cam. I must admit,
just these dick, mate. I haven't heard that one before either.
And I have confidence because I know your figures, and I know you've had a good March, and hopefully that may continue. But I must admit, I've never heard an agent say they've had a bad month. It's always, market's always looking rosy. So,
you've seen my books, mate. There's been a few bad months. Usually March.
The biggest thing for those guys is a lot of these packages are aimed at keeping people employed. So we've talked about how employees should probably be expecting, a hard conversation and maybe, slight pay cuts or whatever that may look like for the next period of time. Similarly with employers, there's things employers can be doing. One, to maximize the stimulus. So, that first and second round, which is now up to $100,000 for a small business, a tax-free incentive paid to that business. And that was all designed for keeping people employed. So that wasn't designed so the business owner can pocket that $100,000, close up shop and kind of Scrooge McDuck in his bathroom, in the evenings. And so it's about kind of modeling out the cash flow, modeling out that $100,000. And what we've done is modeled it out and said, well, how can we keep everything as it is, keep everyone on, employed, got the money there are, how long will that $100,000 last us? How long, have we got? And that's a better model than just trying to, be profiteering on it. Similarly with the JobKeeper payment, look, I'd say hold fire on decisions around staff for another week. JobKeeper Payment, this 1,500 a fortnight per employee, is backdated. So, irrespective if someone was let go already or stood down already, that is available to kind of re-engage with that person. But ideally, what that is designed to do is take the burden off Centrelink, take the burden off the team member, and help subsidise their wage if they're still working. So I would say hold fire on making critical decisions around staff until that comes out, so that you can factor that in. And look, there's nothing as a business to stop someone sacking someone. So rather than standing someone down, there's nothing to say that the business has to. So the business owner really needs to show some leadership. They're really in the box seat to kind of really assist that team member. So, letting someone go, sure, they jump in the queue at Centrelink and get their JobKeeper payment. But if they're not let go and you facilitate this 1,500 a fortnight, 750 a week payment to them, sure, a little bit of admin on the business end, but A, it's more money for the employee. B, they don't have to line up at Centrelink. And C, when we see the inevitable kind of passing of the crisis we're in now, however long that takes, well, you've still been engaged with that employee. You've effectively helped them out because they've got more money than they would have otherwise got directly from Centrelink. And you would hope that would engender a bit more goodwill and a bit more ability to kind of then all, gear up together when this is all behind us. So I'd say hold fire on things for the next week, but do what you can to keep people employed and facilitate that $750 a week payment.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's why I love you. You use the word leadership there. There's never been a time while I've been alive where good leadership has been more important. There's nothing wrong with being proactive and having plans in place for scenario A, B, C, D, all the way through to Z, but pulling the trigger too soon is going to do more harm than good, and it'll only be the short-sighted that have already done that or will continue to do that because, hell hath no fury like a pissed-off employee, and when things do come back...
Less spouse.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a chance here to do right by human beings, and I urge every business owner or company to do that. Take up the challenge. Mate, is there anything? This has been absolutely awesome. It's going to help a lot of people. Is there anything else you want to add that we might have skipped over? So basically, if you're an employer, you need to get onto your accountant, make sure they're registering you for all the rebates you can. If you're a sole trader or an employee, well, sole traders need to get on and do it themselves, or find a good accountant who will do it for them.
Yep.
Employees need to start the conversation with their employers so they know exactly where things are at. If you're a casual who was let go after March 1st, bring your old employers back. Make sure you keep a paper trail, but ask them if they're registering for the JobKeeper payments. Apparently, if you're Monzi, you can keep working for me and go and get your $750. So, good luck to you. Good luck to you, brother. It's your shout. And if you were already unemployed, you just got your bloody pay doubled. So enjoy it and don't be rubbing it in people's faces.
Yeah, perfect, mate. You've summed it up really well.
Mate, just before we go, who are you? Where are you from? How can people find you if they need your help?
Yeah, great. Jeremy Fox, founder at Fox Group Chartered Accountants. I've got a team of about 20 people, just previously in the Mariners building at Tuggerah Central Coast, but now got to spread out in lounge rooms, living rooms, and home offices. So look, reach out, foxgroup.com.au or 0243 533 889.
Well said. Well done. Love you, brother. We'll talk soon, eh?
Thanks, Cam. Good to be on. Talk soon.
See you, mate. Bye.